So my superhero identity is visual artist, and by day I'm a mild-mannered college professor. This is a video I shot at the Central Park Zoo in New York City. It shows one of the resident polar bears swimming back and forth in her habitat. Polar bears are an overused but extremely effective symbol of our collective feelings about climate change. They're white, they're fluffy, they're kind of dog-like, they're cute, and we hate the idea that they may one day be extinct. This polar bear's behavior, this repetitive behavior, swimming back and forth, reflects the rut we find ourselves in the discussion about climate change. How do we enter this discussion? What are the solutions to these problems? This is Future Bear. This is a character that I've created to use in my work because I see that it's a very powerful visual symbol. And I'm interested in using symbols like that to create really clear messages about environmental issues. But my work wasn't always about the environment. In fact, I was trained to make art for art's sake. And in the last 10 years, my travels and my experiences teaching have really changed my approach to making art. I make art about issues that concern me deeply in order to generate positive change in my community. Now, in order to understand how my art went from art practice to art activism, you'll have to take a journey with me. We're going to go to the Galapagos, Hawaii, Antarctica, and Iceland. And at that point, we'll check back in with our friend Future Bear. So our first stop is the Galapagos Islands, an archipelago off the coast of Ecuador in the Pacific Ocean. And as Charles Darwin found out in 1835, this is a fantastic place to see evolutionary forces at work. Each island has its very own unique environment formed by the convergence of major ocean currents over a volcanic hotspot. This is the lava cactus, one of many native species that has evolved and adapted to survive in this specific climate on the Galapagos. I call it the Mordor cactus because of its hideous upside-down tarantula legs. The island also hosts marine iguanas, blue-footed boobies, and a host of other marine mammals and fish species not found anywhere else on Earth that have adapted specifically to survive on the little islands that they're found on. After this trip, my work became a vehicle to explore evolutionary adaptation, and in particular, the battles between native and non-native species. I became really fascinated with the sorts of changes that organisms have to go through over time in order to survive and beat out the competition. I created a body of work that used this biological invasion as a metaphor to explore our military invasions about Afghanistan and Iraq. This piece, titled Moyamoya Invasion of Non-Native Species, is a mixed media installation. It's about 15 feet tall by 10 feet wide, and it includes drawings, prints, paintings, and photographs pinned directly to the wall. It opens up like a giant sketchbook. And my intention is for the viewer to become surrounded by this environment, immersed in it, to be thinking about concepts of invasion, and to be seduced by the coloring and layering in the piece. My next trip was to Hawaii, the big island of Hawaii, in 2006. Another chain of islands in the Pacific where rich biodiversity supports a wide variety of native species. And that it looks like paradise is reason enough to visit, right? But when I got there, a lot of people told me stories about how non-native species have decimated the native species there. I was fascinated by that. Has anybody heard about the mongoose problem in Hawaii? A couple of you? Yeah, so the Indian mongoose was introduced by people on purpose to curb the rat population on plantation, and instead they ate all the native birds on the island. Hawaii's now known, unfortunately, as the endangered species capital of the world. I set up my studio at the Red Cinder Artist Residency, which is on the south side of the island, and I spent a couple of weeks thinking about how unique each living species is and how it relates to the complex environment in which it's found. So on the Big Island, there's snow at the top of Mauna Loa and Mauna Kea. There's lava gushing into the sea from like a 1985 eruption. There are rainforests thick with giant tree ferns. They're desert landscapes paved with all this petrified lava flow. So it's a really diverse climate area. And this is in an island, or on an island, that you can drive around in one day. So I started making this collection of seeds and rocks and plants that would help me tell the story of this incredible biodiversity. And I brought along a copy of Alberta Seba's Natural Cabinet of Curiosity, which provided me with a structure to look at this idea of having a cabinet of curiosities. So eventually I would create 98 mixed media images in an installation called Wonders of the Sea. And this would span about 17 feet of wall space in the Cornell Fine Arts Museum in a solo exhibition I had there in 2007. This is a detail from the installation. This image is called Octopod, and it highlights the mixed media layering techniques I was using to create the work. My goal was to create a collection of specimens that was as visually intricate and eclectic as Seba's original 18th century collection. So when I was in Hawaii, I took a walk down to the green sand beach, which is only a couple miles from the residency. It's the southernmost tip of the island of Hawaii. And I noticed, first of all, being from Florida, where every inch of coastline is developed, that it wasn't very highly developed. And the locals would like it to stay that way, by the way, so don't go build a house there. And it's beautiful, but because nobody really owns great stretches of the landscape, there's a lot of trash on the beach. All kinds of trash carried there from global currents from all over the world. You know, buoyant things like tires and drums and plastic water bottles, anything that floats a long distance. Lots of fishing nets, more fishing nets than anything else. Because it's a global problem, marine pollution belongs to all of us. It gets carried around the world on these big conveyor belt currents. And so there's text in the artist's book that is from a variety of different languages. About 800 miles northwest of Hawaii is the Pacific Gyre. Have you heard of this place? Also called the Pacific Garbage Patch. It's an area where global currents come together and stall out. It's a no man's sea of broken down tiny bits of plastic. By some estimates, it's 3 times the size of the state of Texas. Here's a detail from this book. The relief prints are done right on a rice paper that's stained with acrylic inks, and they're sewn together in a tangled web, which for me symbolizes that it's a really complex problem without a simple solution. Another piece that came out of my time at the Green Sand Beach is called Plastic Fantastic, and it's a mixed media piece that really focuses on our overuse of bottled water, not meaning to embarrass anyone drinking out of bottled water, but it's a problem. The image here shows a little boy from the 1950s from a textbook for kids about the water cycle. And I chose that time period to reference because it was a time when we thought we could achieve better living through chemistry, and that plastic was the next best, newest thing, and we should make everything out of plastic, right? My interest in all of this marine health has really overlapped with an interest in climate change. And where better to see both issues firsthand than the Antarctic Peninsula. So in 2008, I traveled there from a generous grant from the Genius Foundation and went back again in 2009 leading a group of Rollins College faculty. Antarctica is my favorite place on Earth, I'll admit. That's why I've been there twice. It is the coldest, windiest, and driest place on Earth. It is also keeping frozen about 97% of our fresh water on Earth. It's a very important place for our planet. And because it's all that ice, these are the most unbelievable landscapes I've ever seen. Part of what makes Antarctica, again, so unique is the ice. The ice has been studied, measured, cataloged for years by scientists because it's so important to the Antarctic ecosystem. Many animals depend on the animals that live in the ice. But it's also a place where we study climate change. All of the stuff that's floating around our atmosphere on Earth is eventually trapped in the glaciers around the globe. This piece is called Inventory of Antarctic Sea Ice. It focuses on the really fascinating scientific names for the various stages of sea ice development. Names like frazzle, sugar, pancake, brash, anchor. I don't know where they came up with all these names. They're fabulous. In this piece, I printed those names on some semi-transparent, something called a polymer plate. And it's printed in white ink with some iridescent powder, so I can really express the fragility of the ice. Antarctica captured my imagination even as I tried futilely to capture it through thousands and thousands of photographs, knowing that that would be the raw material for my work when I got home. And when I travel, I've been an ecotourist in a lot of different places in the world, I'm really keenly aware of the impact that I'm going to make on that place. It's unavoidable. And that's a tension that comes up in my work a lot. This painting, titled Tourists Capture Leopard Seal, it's a pun on that. I was thinking about the idea of wanting to fully experience Antarctica, and you can get quite close to the wildlife there. But I didn't want to disturb the wildlife. I didn't want to be part of something that was not supposed to be in the landscape. But as an ecotourist, you become part of the landscape. It's unavoidable. I was also thinking a lot about my life back at home. I was thinking about our consumption of fossil fuels, my daily drive to work, and how that has increased global temperatures over time. On the Antarctic Peninsula, there's been a rise in global temperatures higher than anywhere else on the planet, almost 3 degrees Celsius in the last 50 years. That's a pretty big deal. And that rise in temperature is stressing the ice, particularly the ice shelves along the coast. You've probably heard about a couple of the ice shelf collapses, some of them the size of states or small countries in a matter of weeks. This summer, for 2 of the 12 weeks that oil was gushing into the Gulf of Mexico from the Deepwater Horizon rig accident, I was in Iceland studying the sustainability of the landscape. And when I returned, there was this great article on Greenland, Iceland's less developed neighbor. And it discussed the melting of the Arctic ice cap, and that it's presented quite an economic opportunity to Greenlanders who are quite keen to have oil exploration in their country. Yeah, because they're pretty poor. They look at it as an opportunity. It also discussed the fact that the Greenlandic ice sheet is melting, and it's exposing this substance called cryoconite, which is a black sooty deposit made up of all the world's atmospheric carbon-based pollution. Yeah, and as the cryoconite is exposed, the ice sheet is not able to resist the heat or reflect it back into the atmosphere, so the entire cycle of melting is accelerated. So here we have our intrepid, futuristic polar bear. She's leaving the Greenlandic ice sheet in disgust. She's had enough. As vast deposits of cryoconite are exposed and meltwater rivers come rushing down to the ocean in this landscape that's dotted with identical Deepwater Horizon rig duplicates. But she's got hope because she has evolved and mastered flight by jetpack. And so there's a good chance she's going to get out of there. So how does this relate to my teaching? Well, first of all, I try to teach my students the value of collaboration. I've traveled a lot with experts from a variety of various disciplines such as marine biology and environmental studies. And without the insights and information they've provided me, my work would be completely different. So I have them work together on projects to sharpen their problem-solving skills, but also so that they're able to see their creative process through the eyes of others, which is really important as an artist. And we've taken this creative process, this collaborative creative process, out into the community. We've done a number of murals all around Central Florida with pre-K programs, elementary schools, medical facilities, orphanages, cultural centers, each time supporting the mission of that place and giving the kids that they serve a chance to express themselves creatively. So as citizen artists, my students are out in the community helping people, and they're serving as role models for these younger kids, showing them that artists can be citizens too. We can give our time and our talents to our communities to better them. In this project called the Ocean Art Project, 5th graders and Rollins College students got together to make a suite of prints about the environmental challenges facing our oceans. In the Green Art Project, a different group of 5th graders and students got together to look at the threats facing our natural environments in Central Florida. Our natural environments are threatened by our overuse of water, our poor use of land, urban sprawl. And so they developed a collaborative suite of landscape drawings to take a look at those common problems. And when students learn this way, they tend to remember what they've learned for a lot longer. And they also see connections between what they're learning in the classroom and real life, right, which is what we want education to do. These students in particular, most had never been to a state park. They'd never been on a nature hike. And they sure as heck would never sit down with a sketchbook and sketch the landscape. Why would you do that? So this green art project helped them reconnect with nature. And one of the concepts that my students tried to get across to the fifth graders was E.O. Wilson's concept of biophilia. And the way they explained it to them was, well, nature provides you with outdoor spaces to run and play and have fun with your friends. And so nature needs you to protect it from destruction and pollution. When the fifth graders get involved, so do their parents. Sometimes they come on field trips with us, like this guy did. Other times they get involved because their fifth grader comes home and out of the blue wants to go hiking, and they're puzzled by this. And so that's the sort of last key component in what I do. And so it's a domino effect. The last domino always comes back to me. I'm always pushed to make new work, propose new courses, and new community projects as I try to continue the cycle of the citizen artist.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.